hello. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna put the recipes in the comments so you can go ahead and find them in there. Welcome to the third installment of Cooking with Colbath. My name is Julie Colbath. I am the coordinator of Civic Engagement in the Office of Student Life. Today we're going to be doing some simple recipes, just kind of low-key, things that are kind of quick and use up what you already have in your pantry. So we're going to be making a fried rice and a pudding pie, which I think I mentioned last time that I wanted to make one, but I didn't have any milk. Luckily, I went to the grocery store, so we will be doing that today. So the nice thing about fried rice is it's super adaptable. You can kind of add what you have, use what you want. So today we are add chicken. So I am using some canned chicken. It's easy, it's nice, it's gonna have it in my cupboard. I don't just cook chicken to add it in. So I'm gonna turn on our large skillet. You can also use a wok if you have one. Are there any specific things that y'all like to add to your fried rice? Sometimes I'll add tofu. One day I'll try to do like a tofu cooking class, right? Because tofu can be very intimidating if you don't know what to do with it. So I'm just letting this heat for a minute, and then I'm going to add, this is 2 tablespoons of sesame oil. And again, you can use olive oil or vegetable oil, whatever you have. A lot of recipes that are like, have an Asian influence use sesame oil to give it a little bit of a nutty flavor. Added that in. I'm just going to swirl it around so it coats the bottom. And then quickly we will, while that heats up, we'll chop our onion. So the nice thing about fried rice is you can kind of, again, put whatever you want in there. So if you're trying to get rid of different vegetables in your fridge, you can do that. You can also utilize frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, right? There are some times that I'm just like, I have extra rice in my fridge, I have soy sauce, I'm just gonna add this like can of mixed vegetables or can of peas, mix it all together. And it's also nice, you can add different proteins. I don't eat fish, but I know plenty of people do, so you can add shrimp if you want. I've added it with like, I've added canned shrimp before, and had a good response with that. All right, ooh. So we've diced our onion, just took a couple minutes. So then, please don't mind my slightly messy kitchen. We're gonna add in our onion. And then the recipe that I posted also tells you to add in your frozen veggies at this point. Says that you should thaw them. I don't think it really matters. The nice thing with fried rice is it's so adaptable. Like half the time you don't really even need to necessarily follow a recipe. Right, because sometimes I'm like, I have broccoli that's gonna go bad. Let me add that in. or I have a ton of carrots, or sometimes I just have bags of frozen vegetables in my freezer. And so, you know, it can vary, but you can also, like I said, you can add like a can of mixed vegetables, a can of peas and carrots, can of corn, kind of just whatever you want. You could also add like bamboo shoots or water chestnuts, whatever is in your cupboard or in your fridge or in your freezer. So we're gonna let that saute for a few minutes. And so like I said, I was using canned chicken, sort of like canned tuna in some ways, right? It's already ready for you to eat, already cooked and everything. I don't cook with it too often, but it's nice to have around sometimes, right? To just like throw into different recipes. So while that's happening, we are going to, let me scoot my little table, scoot it back. We're just gonna, we have a couple eggs. We're gonna scramble them in there. You know, sometimes when you go to a Chinese restaurant with fried rice, there's like strings of scrambled eggs in there. So sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like to fry an egg and put it on top, so then all of the delicious partially cooked yolk spreads all over. I don't know if y'all have any tricks to cracking eggs. Normally I'll like try to crack them together, because I've heard if you do that, for some reason it's less likely that the shell will break, and then you'll have to fish it out. And then I've started, instead of cracking on the edge, cracking on a flat surface, so it similarly doesn't create like as much jaggedness that potentially the shell will fall into your egg mix. And sometimes it's a good practice, right, if you have to add eggs into something, to put them in a bowl first, so that if you do get shells, they're easier to fish out beforehand. You can use, like, you know, we broke the egg in half. You can use the shells of that egg to try to fish out the other ones. It helps it just kind of latch on, because sometimes, right, when you're trying to get it out with your fingers, it does not work very well. So we just whisked these a little bit, just as if we were scrambling them. You can also do it with a fork. You don't necessarily need a whisk. Whatever you have around, just to sort of break up the egg a little bit. So now we're going back. Ooh, okay. Back to our skillet. I don't know if you can hear, it's making a nice little sizzle. The onions are still cooking at this point. You probably can't see super well, but I'm gonna let them cook a little bit longer. But in the meantime, I'm gonna add the chicken just so that that gets a chance to fry up a little bit. And so this is the first time I'm trying to use canned chicken in here. I think it'll turn out well, right? Because again, it's just cooked chicken that's already ready. So fried rice can be a really good like side dish to some other things that you're having, or it can definitely stand alone. If you add some different proteins, you add an egg on top, it makes for a good tasty meal, which sometimes I will eat for breakfast because I don't really care about it seemingly being a lunch or a dinner food. Getting your fingers wet. Yeah. I don't know where I learned this egg trick. So try it. Let me know if it works. Let me know if you have any other egg tricks. is what I found to help me through the years. So most of the stuff we have at the pantry, so we have the canned chicken at the pantry, we have rice, we've got a bunch of canned vegetables, sometimes we've got some fresh stuff. So you can pretty easily, if you just have some soy sauce, make fried rice with what you find at the pantry. Yeah, and then I mean, eggs are a super nice, super cheap source of protein. I find it to be nice sometimes to just hard boil like 5 or 6 eggs for a week's time, and then I'm able to snack on them like a quick source of protein. Or you can make deviled eggs, egg salad, a bunch of different cool things. I had like sort of like egg salad, but you make it with avocado. I think you probably still add a little bit of mayo, but that's super good too. I do have some avocados in my fridge that I need to use. So our onions are getting a little bit more transparent. Let me try to show you. I know my computer camera is not always the greatest. So we're going to go ahead and push this aside to one side. And then we'll add in our eggs. And we'll try to scramble them around a little bit. Do y'all have any go-to, like, easy, quick recipes? I feel like fried rice is a big one for me. I'm also a fan of just classic grilled cheese and soup. So we're just sort of stirring. You can probably see a little bit. The eggs, and it's sort of scrambling. So we'll just keep doing that until it's mostly scrambled and cooked, and then we'll incorporate it into the rest of the mixture. I'm trying to think of some other like go-tos. I feel like a lot of times tacos are nice and easy. There are some things that I find I make more often that are a little bit more complicated, like these. I don't know if y'all have ever been to a chain restaurant called Cheddar's, but their buffalo chicken wrap is out of control. And so I tried to recreate it with tofu. And I feel like I've gotten it down pretty well. It's a little bit more of a lengthy process because with tofu, we're just going to mix this together now that the eggs are cooked. With tofu, tofu can be a little bit tricky, and normally I'll try to like press it for at least like 20 to 30 minutes, which means I just like take it out of the package and put a heavy pan with some cans in it to try to press some of the water out. And then you have to dip them in a couple different things like flour, milk, and a cornstarch, milk, and some breadcrumbs, and then you have to bake them. So it's a little bit more of a lengthy process, but definitely worth it. So we're going to be using some rice that I've already cooked. I think like when you've used like day-old rice, it ends up working a lot better because it's had some time to sit. It won't get all mushy. So it's a great way, again, to use up some of the leftovers in your fridge. Because sometimes I feel like I overestimate the amount of rice that I'm actually going to need. And so I'll have a little bit extra and not necessarily always know what to do with it. So we're mixing our rice. You might have to break up some pockets of rice that have sort of stuck together. So we're mixing our rice and veggie and chicken mixture together. Again, I have some like big clumps of rice that I'm trying to cut down. So you can see that it's mixed up. We're just going to add the soy sauce. So it's the recipe that I posted calls for like 2 to 3 tablespoons. It's more or less like what you want it to taste like. It's nice that, right, it really only calls for soy sauce. So you can kind of have the proportions to be whatever you want them to be, right? Like for me, very veggie heavy. And so I might add some more veggies, or right, like, I mean, my boyfriend doesn't always like as much vegetables as I do. So I might like take some out and then just add my own veggies, or like stir fry some and then add them on top. You can definitely tell as I'm mixing that the rice is starting to turn brown, absorbing the soy sauce. And so really all you need to do at this point is just let it heat through. So again, this is super easy and it's a nice quick thing, especially to use up leftovers or different things in your pantry. And I, again, love to just like fry an egg and put it on top. That yolk, when you cut into it and it just oozes everywhere, makes me very happy. All right, so I'm just gonna finish stirring that. As you can see, looks pretty good. We're gonna grab a fork and just try it. Yeah, it tastes super good. Nice and easy way to just have a quick meal. I just turned it off, so now I'm already done with that. And so the last thing that we're gonna do is make a pudding pie. Definitely, it's like a childhood favorite, right? Because it was such an easy thing to make as a kid, where you would just have like some pudding boxes, and you could either make your own crust or so I'll wheel my table over. Put these away since we don't need them anymore. So this recipe, if you actually go to like the link that's on the bottom of the recipe card, it'll tell you how many Oreos you need if you actually want to create a crust. Super easy to make your own crusts. If you have Oreos or like graham crackers, you just crumble them up and mix them with some butter and then press them into a pie mold. But I have one of those on hand. And so we're going to use a pie crust. We're going to use 2 ounces of chocolate pudding mix, instant. We're going to use some Cool Whip. And you can use crushed Oreos if you want. You can also add something else. So I just chopped some Oreos up. I'm going to grab milk out of the fridge. So I'm going to measure out 2 cups. So we're not actually going to follow the rules on the box. I'm just going to add a little bit more. So the recipe that we're following calls for 2 cups of milk, which seems like not a lot. I'm going to grab a because each box, if you were just to make it by itself, calls for 2 cups each. But what we're going to do is it's going to have 3 different layers. So the first layer will be like a rich chocolate layer. The second layer will be like a chocolate and Cool Whip layer, so mixed together. And then the third layer will be Cool Whip mixed with some of these Oreos to go on top. So I'm going to take off the plastic from here. We're going to take this off because we will reuse this plastic as the top of our pie so we can store it in the fridge. Because although these pies are like super easy to make, especially being like a no bake, they do take a while to set. I'm just gonna not set that on the stove because that's not a good idea. And throw this in the recycling. Alright, so we've got our nice pie crust ready for our pudding. So we'll make our pudding next. Have y'all tried any cool recipes in quarantine? I feel like sometimes when you're trying to not go to the store as much, you get a little bit more creative in what you make or what you're willing to try. So last week I had a bunch of sweet potatoes that I was trying to use up, and I made this West African like sweet potato stew, which had peanut butter, sweet potatoes, diced tomatoes, chickpeas, coconut milk. So it's like a nice like creamy, savory dish. And so I find sometimes it's nice to try some new recipes. It's not always work out well. I'd also tried last week this like, I had a bunch of sour cream that was going to go bad, and so I tried a sour cream chicken dish, and so it's kind of supposed to be like sour cream and onion type flavor, but it had a ton of Italian herbs, which I love, but it was a little bit too excessive, so sometimes things work out and sometimes they do not. So we're going to add our 2 cups of milk to our 2 boxes of pudding mix. And then we're just going to whisk it until it seems smooth, which might take a couple minutes, right? Because if you're adding like sugar crystals and cocoa powder, which is essentially what pudding is, to cold milk, it might take a while to mix, right? Because it's not able to dissolve like it is in hotter things, like when you make hot chocolate, and it all just mixes so nicely. And so sometimes, right, like stirring pudding also takes a little bit of time because there are some chunks of like the sugar crystals, which some people don't mind when they bite into that. Some people don't love it. So this is going to be really thick because, again, we're taking 2 mixes and we are only using like half the milk. So it'll be a little bit thick, but not to worry. All right, so I'm going to try to get most of this out of the whisk. And so let me pull up the recipe quick. I think it was 1.5 cups. Sometimes it's good to write recipes down, so you're not necessarily having to go on your computer. 2 cups cold milk, 2 packages. 1.5 cups. Okay, so I'm gonna pull out a half cup and a 1 cup. And so we'll take 1 of these and add it in. Since it's really thick, you'll probably want like a spatula or a spoon to try to get it out. So we're gonna add 3 of these because we're doing half cups. So we want to total 1.5 cups. And so at first you can just kind of like jump it in there. And then we'll evenly spread it out after. So we don't have, we have some left, but not a ton. But we're gonna set that aside for a second and just try to even this out. So sometimes when you're working with these cookie crusts, you have to be a little bit careful. If you're like super aggressive, the crumbles can kind of pull. And you don't want necessarily to break your crust. Not that it matters, because sometimes right after these have sat for a few days and you're still eating them, the cookie gets sort of soft, just because it's getting moisture from the pie, from all of the milk and stuff. So I'm just trying to make this, doesn't have to be perfect, but you kind of want it to be an even layer so that it's not crazy different sizes. Right, so that layer is done. We're gonna open up this Cool Whip. You can use, I mean, I don't mind not buying brand names of things. It doesn't really faze me one way or the other. So you don't, sometimes the brand names are more expensive, and so you don't have to always buy the brand. So I'm just trying to see, this is 8 ounces. We want to add about half of that to the remaining pudding. So I'm just gonna, well, I'll grab a spoon. So you can just kind of eyeball it. I don't think it really matters. So we've got about half. We're just gonna dump right on in here. And so I pulled this out of the freezer probably about 3 hours ago. Cool Whip doesn't take too long to thaw out. Turn the notifications off on my phone. There we go. And so then we'll just mix this together. You can either use a spatula, you could use your whisk, you could use a spoon, whatever you want. So we're just going to combine this until it is smooth and creamy. I'm super stoked to eat this, but it'll definitely be an evening snack because this needs to sit for like 4 hours. But hopefully it will be worth it. I've been craving pudding pie for like a month now, and so I'm glad that I get to make it with you today. All right, so you can see it looks a lot lighter than our normal chocolate pudding. So this will be our second layer. We're just gonna throw that all on there. So we're gonna spread that around. Again, trying to make it sort of even. But again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. So it looks pretty even, looks pretty spread. And now we're gonna do the last step. I'm gonna grab another spatula just to make it easier to get it out. So I'm gonna take my crushed Oreos. Again, you can really add anything you want. I mean, sprinkles would be great. Sprinkles are always a classic. You could add like Reese's. Again, pudding pies like fried rice, are very adaptable, which is nice because then you can kind of customize it based on what you have in your pantry. So we mixed the remaining, you probably can't see that very well because it's all little specks, but the remaining Cool Whip with some Oreo pieces. And now our final step is to just add it as the third layer. So I'm real stoked about this. Obviously we won't be able to cut into it on our lesson today, but maybe when this is done in 4 hours and I cut myself a piece, I will take a picture and put it in the comments. Y'all can see how delicious it looks. Although it might not actually be that pretty, it will taste good, I know. So again, just spreading to create an even layer. If you wanted it to be super fancy, you could add like some sort of Oreo decoration on top with different Oreo cookies cut in different ways to make it look classy. But I don't care. Not today. I think it will be delicious regardless. So we kept our plastic top. The hardest thing about this sometimes is you want to make sure that the rim around the crust is sort of out so that you can slide the lip of the lid under it. So I'm probably going to hit some of the whipped cream, and that's fine. So we'll just try to put this on top, and then we'll just close it. The nice thing about getting some of these foil ones is that you have an automatic sealing system built in. I'm just pinching it around the sides so that it closes, so that in the fridge it doesn't absorb a bunch of odors, right? I've got some chopped veggies in there that might smell, and I don't want my pie to taste like onions. So we're all done, and now we're just going to put it in the fridge. And we'll let it sit for 4 hours. So around 8:30, I will be enjoying some pudding pie. And I wish I could share it with all of you, but another time. So that's all I've got for you today. It was a nice, quick class, right? We made dinner and dessert in the span of 30 minutes. So the nice thing, right, if you wanted to have that dessert ready for dinner or after dinner, you can make it early in the day. It only took a few minutes to actually do. Yeah, and it's, again, super adaptable. You could use graham cracker crust instead of the Oreo crust. You could also use vanilla pudding, butterscotch pudding, all the different kinds of pudding to add some different flavors. Looks like I've missed some comments. Oh, banana bread. Yes, a homemade chicken stock. I will post the sweet potato stew recipe. Yeah, I feel like I've been getting bananas and not eating them super fast, so I've definitely been looking for some recipes that utilize bananas, because sometimes I love banana bread, but I can't eat it all the time. I like to freeze them and then put them in smoothies, or you can make banana ice cream. That's always a classic, where you just do bananas and like some sort of milk. You can add a cocoa powder if you want, or you could add chocolate chips after, and sometimes people add nuts. My sister is vegan, and when she would make it, she would normally do almond milk, walnuts, frozen bananas, and chocolate chips. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. If you have any suggestions on what you might want to see next, Feel free to throw it in the comments. I know sometimes people aren't always watching live, but if you've watched it and you have some opinions on what else we should make, we'll be doing another class in 2 weeks, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share some recipes. I'll definitely throw in some different recipes in the chat, some of the recipes that I've been making, some of my favorite things. I'd love to do like a little recipe share with y'all. So thank you, and we'll see you all in a couple weeks.